The sun bleeds across the horizon, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and purple. But here, on the streets of Culiacán, the sunset is tainted. Thick, oily columns of black smoke claw their way into the evening air, rising from the carcasses of burning vehicles. Tractor trailers and delivery trucks, once the lifeblood of commerce, now serve as macabre barricades, their tires melted into pools of rubber and their cargo reduced to ash. This is a narco-bloqueo, a signature of cartel warfare, designed to choke the city's arteries and bring it to a grinding, terrifying halt. The air is heavy with the acrid smell of burning fuel and the palpable weight of fear. No one dares to venture out onto these boulevards. The silence that blankets the city is profound, a stark contrast to the usual symphony of urban life. There are no sounds of children playing, no vendors calling out their wares, no distant hum of traffic. The only noise that occasionally breaks the stillness is the metallic groan of a smoldering truck chassis or the distant, menacing pop-pop-pop of gunfire. This is a city of 1 million people, yet its main thoroughfares are as deserted as a post-apocalyptic film set. The emptiness is a testament to the power struggle that has consumed Culiacán, turning a bustling state capital into a ghost town where the living hide behind locked doors, praying the violence passes them by. Through this desolate landscape, a sense of dread permeates everything. The streets, usually teeming with cars and pedestrians, are now vast, empty corridors. The setting sun casts long, distorted shadows that seem to dance and writhe with a life of their own, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Every flickering streetlight, every gust of wind that rustles through the abandoned storefronts feels like a prelude to another eruption of violence. The city holds its breath, caught in the suffocating grip of an internal war that has ripped its social fabric apart and left nothing but smoke, silence, and the chilling anticipation of what the night will bring. This scene, now grimly familiar to the residents, is a direct consequence of a conflict that has been raging since September 2024. What was once the seemingly unbreakable Sinaloa cartel has fractured, turning brother against brother in a brutal civil war. The burning blockades are not random acts of chaos. They are strategic moves in a deadly chess game being played out on the city's streets. Each fire is a message, a claim of territory, and a warning. For the people of Culiacán, it is a constant, terrifying reminder that they are living in the heart of a war zone, trapped between factions fighting for control of a crumbling empire. As dusk settles deeper into the city, the few functioning streetlights begin to flicker on, casting a weak, intermittent glow upon the abandoned avenues. Their unsteady light creates a strobe effect, revealing and then concealing the details of the urban battlefield. One moment, the charred shell of a sedan is illuminated in stark detail. The next, it is plunged back into darkness. This unreliable light plays tricks on the eyes, making it difficult to distinguish between shadows and threats. It's in this uncertain gloom that the true masters of the night emerge, their presence felt more than seen, adding a layer of psychological terror to the physical danger that saturates the city. High above the empty streets, silhouetted against the last vestiges of twilight, figures move with quiet purpose. They are the cartel gunmen, the punteros or lookouts, who have taken up strategic positions on the rooftops of apartment buildings and commercial centers. They are ghosts in the urban machine, armed with high-powered rifles and radios, their dark forms barely distinguishable from the antennas and water tanks that dot the city's skyline. Their job is to watch, to report, and if necessary, to enforce the will of their leaders with a hail of bullets from their elevated perches, transforming the cityscape into a sniper's alley. These rooftop sentinels are a critical element of the cartel's control over the urban environment. They serve as the eyes and ears of their factions, monitoring the movements of rival groups and, more importantly, the military forces sent to reclaim the city. Their presence instills a deep-seated paranoia in the population and among the authorities on the ground. Every window, every rooftop, every dark corner is a potential source of attack. This constant unseen threat ensures that even in moments of apparent calm, the tension remains excruciatingly high as the city is watched from 1,000 unseen eyes. The psychological impact of these rooftop gunmen cannot be overstated. They represent the cartel's omnipresence, a reminder that even when the streets are quiet, the war is far from over. They turn the very architecture of the city against its inhabitants and the forces trying to protect them. For the soldiers and police moving below, every step is a calculated risk. For the civilians hiding in their homes, a glance out the window can feel like a death sentence. These shadowy figures are the embodiment of the cartel's grip on Culiacán, a silent, ever-watchful, and deadly presence that haunts the city long after the sun has gone down. Into this high-stakes arena of urban warfare, the Mexican government has deployed its most elite units. Cautiously advancing down the smoke-filled boulevards are members of the Fuerzas Especiales, Mexico's special forces. They move with the practiced discipline of soldiers who have been trained for this exact scenario. Clad in full tactical gear, their faces obscured by helmets and balaclavas, they press forward, their assault rifles held at the ready. They use the available cover with expert precision, hugging the walls of buildings and darting from one protected position to the next, their movements a tense dance of survival and aggression. Their primary source of cover and forward momentum comes from a fleet of armored trucks known as Sandcats. These military-grade vehicles, designed for urban combat, inch their way through the debris-strewn streets, their reinforced plating offering crucial protection from the sniper fire that can erupt from any direction at any moment. The soldiers move in tight formations behind these steel beasts, using them as mobile shields. The low growl of the Sandcats' engines is one of the few sounds that dares to challenge the silence, a mechanical roar that signals the government's attempt to claw back control from the cartels, meter by bloody meter. The soldiers are not merely on patrol, they are on a mission to dismantle the narco-bloqueos and hunt down the cartel cells that have turned the city into their personal fortress. It is a perilous task. The enemy they face is well-armed, highly motivated, and possesses an intimate knowledge of the city's labyrinthine streets and hidden passageways. Every intersection is a potential ambush point, every building a possible stronghold. The special forces are operating deep within hostile territory, where the lines between combatant and civilian are dangerously blurred, and the threat of attack is constant and unrelenting. This dynamic creates a tense cat-and-mouse game played out across the sprawling urban landscape. While the soldiers hunt the gunmen, they themselves are being hunted from the rooftops and darkened alleyways. The Sandcat trucks provide a significant advantage, but they are not invincible. The cartels have access to anti-materiel rifles and explosives capable of disabling even armored vehicles. The struggle for Culiacán is a brutal, block-by-block fight, where the advanced training and equipment of the special forces are pitted against the ruthless tactics and local dominance of the cartels in a battle for the very soul of the city. To understand the inferno that has engulfed Culiacán, one must look back to the summer of 2024, to an act of betrayal that shattered a decades-old criminal dynasty. For years, the Sinaloa cartel, arguably the most powerful drug trafficking organization in the world, was managed by a fragile but effective partnership. On one side were Los Chapitos, the ambitious and violent sons of the incarcerated Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. On the other was Ismael El Mayo Zambada, the cartel's enigmatic godfather, a legendary figure who had never spent a single day in prison and was seen as the organization's strategic mastermind and stabilizing force. This delicate balance of power was shattered in late July 2024. In a move of stunning audacity, one of El Chapo's sons, Joaquín Guzmán López, orchestrated the unthinkable. He ambushed El Mayo Zambada, the man who was his father's contemporary and partner, the shadowy patriarch of the entire enterprise. Zambada was not just attacked, he was kidnapped by his own allies. This was more than a power grab. It was a patricidal act within the cartel's hierarchy, a violation of the unwritten codes that had governed the criminal underworld in Sinaloa for generations. the trust that held the cartel together was irrevocably broken. The betrayal did not end with the kidnapping. In a final, shocking twist, Los Chapitos handed the aging and captured El Mayo Zambada over to U.S. authorities. This move sent shockwaves through the global drug trade. For decades, Zambada had been one of the most wanted men by the DEA, a ghost who had eluded capture through a combination of cunning, corruption, and loyalty. His delivery to American law enforcement by the sons of his former partner was an unprecedented act, signaling a new, more ruthless era for the Sinaloa cartel, one where old allegiances meant nothing in the face of raw ambition. The capture of El Mayo was the catalyst for the war. His faction, Los Mayos, composed of loyalists who had served under him for years, immediately declared war on Los Chapitos. They viewed the betrayal not just as an attack on their leader, but as an existential threat to their very existence within the organization. The fragile peace that Zambada had so carefully maintained for years was shattered overnight. The Sinaloa cartel, once a monolithic empire, was now a kingdom divided against itself, and Culiacán, its capital, was destined to become the primary battlefield for the bloody civil war that followed. Following the shocking betrayal of El Mayo Zambada in July 2024, a tense and volatile quiet settled over Sinaloa. It was, well, the calm before the storm. The two factions spent weeks gathering their forces, sharpening their knives, and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. The spark finally ignited on September 9, 2024. On that day, the simmering conflict erupted into open warfare across Culiacán. The city awoke to the terrifying sights and sounds of a full-scale offensive as Los Mayos launched their first major retaliation against Los Chapitos, who were prepared to defend their newly seized dominance. The eruption of violence was swift and overwhelming. Coordinated teams from both factions swarmed the city, hijacking buses, commercial trucks, and private cars to create the fiery narco-bloqueos at key intersections, effectively paralyzing all movement. Gun battles broke out in broad daylight, turning shopping districts and residential neighborhoods into active combat zones. The government's response was immediate, but honestly, insufficient to quell the chaos. Schools were ordered to close indefinitely, businesses shuttered their doors, and the city's 1 million residents were plunged into a state of lockdown, trapped by the crossfire of a war they wanted no part in. The first 2 weeks of the conflict set a horrifying precedent for what was to come. In that short span alone, authorities reported nearly 60 homicides and dozens of disappearances. The violence was not just frequent, it was grotesquely brutal. Mutilated bodies began appearing on roadsides and hanging from overpasses, a barbaric form of psychological warfare intended to terrorize rival factions and the general public alike. In one particularly harrowing incident, a 2-hour gun battle in the heart of the city brought all life to a standstill, with sustained automatic gunfire echoing between buildings as citizens cowered in their homes. The statistics from the year that followed paint a grim picture of a city spiraling into a humanitarian crisis. Between September 2024 and August 2025, the internal cartel war was directly responsible for a staggering 1,824 murders in Culiacán. This represented a more than 200% increase in the homicide rate, a clear indicator of the conflict's intensity. Furthermore, over 2,000 people were reported as missing during the same period, their fates unknown, their families left in a state of agonizing uncertainty. The initial eruption of violence in September was not a brief flare-up. It was the beginning of a sustained, brutal, and devastating war. In the face of this unprecedented urban warfare, the Mexican government's response has been massive, yet the results have been, well, mixed. Thousands of troops from the Army and the National Guard have been poured into Culiacán and the surrounding state of Sinaloa. Convoys of military vehicles have become a common, if unsettling, sight on the city's highways. The objective is clear: to re-establish the state's authority, dismantle the cartel's operational capacity, and restore some semblance of peace. However, this has proven to be an incredibly difficult, if not impossible task in a city so deeply enmeshed with the cartel's influence. The deployment includes the nation's most formidable units, the Special Forces, who are equipped with advanced weaponry and armored vehicles like the Sandcats. These forces have engaged in direct confrontations with cartel sicarios, managing to clear blockades and secure key areas of the city at various times. Yet, their successes are often fleeting. For every blockade cleared, another one appears on a different street. For every cartel cell dismantled, another seems to rise in its place. The government is fighting a hydra-headed enemy on its home turf, an enemy that is deeply embedded within the community and can melt away into the civilian population. The cost for the government has been tragically high. Since the war between Los Chapitos and Los Mayos began, over 50 police officers have been killed in the line of duty. These officers are often the first responders and the most vulnerable targets, outgunned by cartel assassins armed with military-grade hardware. The sheer ferocity of the cartel's resistance demonstrates their unwillingness to cede control. They are fighting not just for territory, but for their very survival, and they have shown that they are willing to inflict and sustain heavy casualties to maintain their grip on the region. This ongoing struggle highlights a grim reality. Despite the presence of thousands of heavily armed troops, the government has been unable to definitively contain the violence. The conflict has become a grinding war of attrition. The military can establish a temporary presence in a neighborhood, but they cannot be everywhere at once. The moment their patrols move on, the cartel's influence seeps back in. This has created a stalemate where neither side can claim victory, leaving the city of Culiacán trapped in a perpetual state of low-grade warfare, punctuated by terrifying episodes of intense, all-out battle. The true victims of this cartel civil war are, without question, the ordinary citizens of Culiacán. Their lives have been fundamentally altered, held hostage by a conflict not of their making. The city, once a vibrant hub of agriculture and commerce, has been paralyzed. A pervasive state of fear dictates the rhythm of daily life. Many residents live under a self-imposed lockdown, venturing out only when absolutely necessary, their movements dictated by rumors of shootouts and the location of the latest blockades. The simple act of going to the grocery store or driving to work has become a life-threatening risk assessment. The economic consequences have been catastrophic. With the city frequently shut down by violence, businesses have been unable to operate. The constant threat has scared off investment and brought local commerce to a standstill. It is estimated that the conflict has resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars in economic losses for Culiacán. Beyond the large-scale figures, the human cost is devastating. Between 2024 and 2025, the city lost over 10,000 jobs as businesses were forced to close permanently. Families who for generations had known stability now face financial ruin, adding economic despair to their constant fear. The violence has also triggered a significant demographic shift. While the city itself is a war zone, the surrounding rural areas of Sinaloa, long under cartel influence, have become even more dangerous. The fighting between factions for control of smuggling routes and production territories in the mountains has driven thousands of people from their homes. These displaced families, having lost their land and livelihoods, have fled to Culiacán, seeking anonymity and safety in the larger urban area. Ironically, they arrive in a city that is itself besieged, swelling the ranks of the unemployed and placing immense strain on already limited resources. For the children and young people of Culiacán, the future looks bleak. Frequent school closures have disrupted their education, robbing them of opportunities and a sense of normalcy. Growing up surrounded by such brutal violence leaves deep psychological scars, normalizing a reality that should be unthinkable. The city is trapped in a vicious cycle. The war cripples the economy. The lack of economic opportunity makes young people more susceptible to recruitment by the cartels, which in turn fuels the very violence that is destroying their home. The price of the cartel's internal power struggle is being paid by an entire generation. The escalating violence in Culiacán, a direct result of the US-involved capture of El Mayo Zambada, has inevitably spilled over into the diplomatic arena, creating significant friction between Mexico and the United States. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, whose security policy has often been criticized as non-confrontational, has publicly pointed the finger at the United States. He has argued that the American strategy of targeting and arresting high-level cartel leaders, or kingpins, is a primary cause of destabilization. From his perspective, removing a figure like Zambada created a power vacuum that Los Chapitos violently filled, directly leading to the current war. The Mexican president's narrative suggests that these high-profile arrests, often pursued aggressively by U.S. agencies like the DEA, do not solve the underlying problem of drug trafficking, but instead shatter internal cartel structures and trigger bloody succession wars. President López Obrador has accused the U.S. of unilateral actions that ignore the subsequent consequences for the Mexican people, who are left to suffer the violent fallout. This public condemnation represents a significant diplomatic dispute, framing the chaos in Culiacán not just as a domestic security failure, but as a collateral effect of American foreign policy and its long-running war on drugs. This accusation did not go unanswered. Ken Salazar, the U.S. ambassador to Mexico, promptly rejected the Mexican president's claims. In his public statements, Ambassador Salazar emphasized that transnational criminal organizations are a shared problem that requires close bilateral cooperation, not a blame game. He stressed the importance of a united front against the cartels, arguing that weakening these powerful criminal enterprises is in the best interest of both nations. The American position holds that targeting leadership is a critical component of disrupting and dismantling these organizations, and that the responsibility for internal security ultimately lies with the Mexican government. This diplomatic back and forth highlights the deep-seated tensions and differing philosophies that complicate the joint effort to combat organized crime. While Mexican soldiers and police fight cartel gunmen on the streets of Culiacán, political leaders in Mexico City and Washington, D.C. are engaged in their own war of words. The United States pushes for more aggressive action and arrests, while Mexico laments the resulting instability. This fractured alliance at the highest levels only serves to complicate an already dire situation on the ground, leaving a lingering question of whether true cooperation is possible while both sides disagree on the fundamental strategy. As of today, February 25, 2026, the long shadow of fear continues to stretch over Culiacán. The war between Los Chapitos and Los Mayos has become the grim new normal, a permanent feature of life that residents must navigate every single day. The intense citywide battles have become less frequent, replaced by a more insidious and unpredictable pattern of violence. Kidnappings, targeted assassinations, and sudden localized shootouts can erupt without warning, ensuring that a baseline of anxiety and tension never dissipates. The city is no longer in a constant state of open warfare, but it is far from being at peace. For the people of Culiacán, daily life is an exercise in cautious adaptation. Parents map out safe routes to the few schools that have reopened, routes that are subject to change based on the latest rumors or news reports. The rhythm of the city has changed. Streets empty out long before sunset, as people rush to the relative safety of their homes. The once vibrant nightlife is gone, replaced by quiet, fearful evenings spent behind bolted doors. The psychological toll is immense, as citizens grapple with the ambient stress of living in a place where the rule of law is constantly challenged by the rule of the gun. The future of Culiacán, and indeed the entire Sinaloa cartel, remains profoundly uncertain. Will Los Chapitos succeed in consolidating their power and eliminating the remnants of the Mayo faction, perhaps leading to a new, albeit brutal, form of stability? Or will the war of attrition continue indefinitely, bleeding the city dry and further eroding any semblance of government control? The military presence remains heavy, but it has become part of the landscape, a force of containment rather than a solution. The soldiers can react to violence, but they seem powerless to prevent it. Ultimately, the story of Culiacán is a microcosm of a larger struggle. It is the story of a city and a people caught in the crossfire of a criminal empire tearing itself apart, and a government struggling to assert its sovereignty. The burning trucks and rooftop snipers are the most visible symptoms of a deep-seated disease. As long as the immense profits of the drug trade flow, and as long as powerful factions are willing to kill for their share, the cycle of violence seems destined to continue. For the 1 million residents of Culiacán, there is no clear path back to the life they once knew, only the daily struggle for survival under a long, dark shadow of fear.